The night I got jumped into my fraternity, I remember thinking to myself, what did I just get myself into? But by that point, there was no backing out. My name is Virgilio Lopez, and the goal of this channel is simple: glorify God, shame the devil, and win souls for his kingdom. On this channel, I'm going to share my testimony about fraternity hazing, discuss the culture behind it, and help young men see what they're really getting involved in before they make the same mistake that I did. But to understand how I ended up there, we have to go back to when I first got to college. If you're a high school or college student thinking about joining a fraternity, you need to hear this story. Because the night that I went through my initiation, something in my spirit told me that this was not right. But by then, it felt too late to walk away. When I first got to college, I wasn't looking for trouble. I was looking for brotherhood. I wanted belonging. I wanted to be around strong, respected men. And from the outside, that's exactly what it looked like. There was a pre-pledging phase where you get to know the brothers, you learn about the organization, and I'll be honest, it felt intense, but nothing felt dangerous just yet. I was pledging Alpha Phi Alpha, and I want to be very clear. I'm not here to single out one organization, because this is a culture issue that exists in multiple organizations. Every Greek organization that I know, I've heard some story of this sort. So I'm just sharing what I personally went through. But everything changed the moment the real process started. Once I was officially online, that's when everything escalated. What was presented as brotherhood quickly turned into pressure, control, and fear. We were expected to be available constantly, running errands, memorizing information about the organization, and showing up to midnight sessions to recite all that information almost every night. And if you didn't perform the way that the brothers expected you to, there were consequences. We were pushed physically. We were tested mentally. We were humiliated. We were told to do humiliating things. We were put in situations that crossed personal boundaries. And the craziest part about all this is that it was normalized. Like, this was just a part of the process. A lot of the brothers would say things like, oh, well, I went through this. Oh, my process was worse. There were other Greeks from other fraternities and sororities that would say the same thing. Like, oh, this is just what it's like. And I remember for my process, I was so overwhelmed with fear that I actually lost my appetite completely for a portion of that process. When I would have food, food had no taste to me. That's how much stress I was under. There were moments where I genuinely thought I wouldn't make it to see another day. I thought this would be the end of me. I will never forget my first night online when I pledged. I was taken to a house that I had never seen before. I was put a blindfold on my face, and they told me to wear a suit because we were going to some special banquet or something like that. And that was the night that I got jumped in. I wasn't able to see who was around me, but I knew that I was surrounded at least by 6 different men. And that's when they jumped me in. And in that moment, everything became real. That's also when I experienced getting paddled for the first time. I won't go into graphic detail, but I will say this. It was intense enough to make me question everything immediately. When that first night was over, I sat in my car and I had my first real mental breakdown in my whole life. I was crying. I was confused beyond belief. And I was asking myself, what did I just get myself into? Now, there was another night where things escalated even more. A room full of grown men, mind you, were watching, they were participating, and I would say this was the most brutal night of my whole process. Again, like I said, I won't get into detail, but I realized something was wrong, and in that moment, this didn't feel like brotherhood. It didn't feel like unity. It felt like survival. Before I go further, I need to say this. If you're watching this and you're thinking about joining a fraternity, or you're already in one, and something feels kind of off to you, subscribe to this channel. And it's not because I'm chasing numbers, but because I'm going to speak on things that most people are too afraid to even talk about. And if this is opening your eyes, share this with someone who's thinking about pledging, or who they're simply just entering college, because it could save them from walking into something that they don't fully understand. So why didn't you just leave? I get asked that often, and it's a fair question. At the time, I was 19. I was impressionable. I was looking for acceptance. And I was made to believe that if I walked away, everybody on campus would know, and I would be humiliated. I would basically be labeled as the guy who quit the process, who wasn't tough enough. I was told I wasn't a real man if I did not pass this process. And at 19, that validation, it feels like everything. Looking at it now, I don't care. But back then, it felt real. And at the same time, I also felt like if I stayed, this might be the end of my life. So I was stuck between two fears. And that's where a lot of people get trapped. At one point, I hit my breaking point. And I did something I never thought I would do while I was online. I told my dad. I showed him everything. I showed him the bruises, I showed him the marks. And he sat down, and I will never forget the look on his face. All in one expression, I saw, in his silence, I saw anger, I saw sadness, and the first thing that he said to me was, "Get dressed, we're going to the police." My heart sank. And I realized, oh, this stuff is getting real. Now, check this out. I was so deep into this process. When he said that, I told him no. Because I believed that I was protecting my brothers, my fraternity brothers. Now, looking back at it now, would I have done the same thing? Hell no. I would have been snitching. I would have been in that courtroom pointing fingers left and right. I would have been showing text messages. Yeah, I would have snitched. But I just, I have such a different perspective of it. But like, that's how real the pressure and the mindset was at the time. Now, that experience with my fraternity, It forced me to confront something deeper. It was that this process wasn't just physical, it was also a spiritual process. Because nothing, nothing about what I was going through aligned with who I knew I was in Christ. It did not align with God, and that conviction stayed with me for years. Eventually, I went through the official, aka the paper process, and I became an official member of the organization. I was never treated like a real brother because of how it ended. So I went through the pledging process, but I got the paper treatment. So the reality didn't match the expectation once I was a member. Since I was solo crossing and solo on campus, I had responsibility because I was the chapter president right away. Right? I was rebuilding the chapter because it was small. So I didn't really feel that brotherhood. And those who pledged me, they made me feel excluded. They disrespected me. They were dishonest. And, I felt like I was around wolves. I was around people, right? Don't get me wrong. I was doing events. But I felt like I was alone. And over time, I realized this. This wasn't what I signed up for. Now, I want to be honest about something. Even though I wasn't the one carrying things out, like the hazing rituals, once I crossed into the organization, I turned a blind eye to it. I still allowed someone else to go through that same process. That's something that I have to live with. Because silence and going along with it is part of how these cycles continue. And that's why these organizations, they can do this for decades upon decades and get away with it. Now, were there benefits to being a part of this organization? Yeah, there were. I was given opportunities in the business world. I had gotten job connections. I had popularity on campus. People knew who I was. And to be honest, at the time, it felt like being part of the organization, I felt like I was a god on campus. And I know that sounds blasphemous, but that's how I was living at that time. But let me be very real with you. None of that was worth what it cost me. Because, like it says in the Bible, for what does it profit a man to gain the entire world but lose his soul? And that's the question that you have to ask yourself. Is it really worth it? Eventually, I walked away. And when I did, I found something that I didn't have before. I had peace, I had clarity, and a real relationship with God. He removed the anger I had towards those brothers. He healed the emotional scars that I carried with me for years. And he gave me the strength to even talk about this today. So my warning, if you are watching this, I'm not here to judge you. I'm just here to warn you. Everything isn't what it always looks like. And some decisions can take you further than you ever intended to go. If you made it to the end of this video, I want you to hear this. A lot of men went through things like this and are going through things like this, and they never speak about it. Some, like myself, carry this in silence for years. But silence is exactly how these cultures stay protected. So if you've gone through something like this and you feel led to share your story, reach out to me. You can message me directly on Instagram or TikTok. My username is From Pain to Purpose 7. I want to hear your testimony, because your story might help someone else avoid making the same decision. And if this video impacted you, subscribe to the channel. My mission is simple: glorify God, shame the devil, and win souls for his kingdom. And share this with a young man who's thinking about joining a fraternity, because this could change his life.